My name is Stacy, and I'm the youngest daughter in my family. Ever since I can remember, I was always the other child. The one people forgot at family dinners, the one who took her own school pictures to hang on the fridge, because no one else bothered. But my sister? Julie? She was the golden child. Julie had everything. Her own room with fairy lights, a closet full of clothes, the latest phone every year. My parents adored her. Whenever she walked into a room, their faces lit up like she was some kind of celebrity. And me? I'd be in the corner, doing homework, or trying to help in the kitchen, just hoping someone would notice. I still remember the time when I got first place in a science fair. I was in 6th grade. I built a small model of the solar system and explained every planet in perfect detail. I even practiced the night before with a flashlight and cue cards. When I told my parents I won, they smiled for a second, said good job, and then changed the subject to Julie's dance recital. She hadn't even placed in the top 3, but they were so proud of her for trying. It hurt, of course. But I didn't complain. I thought maybe if I worked harder, studied more, got better grades, they'd notice. So that's what I did. Every night, I stayed up late with books. I asked teachers for extra assignments. I read biology textbooks in bed while Julie watched shows with our parents in the living room. I wanted to be a doctor. Not because it sounded cool or because of some movie. I wanted to help people, especially those who couldn't afford help. I saw how expensive hospitals were, how unfair the world felt sometimes. I wanted to do something real. I thought, maybe one day, my parents would be proud of me, proud enough to say it out loud. But with Julie around, that moment never came. Julie wasn't a bad person, not at first. But she knew she was their favorite. And she used it. If I got something nice, Julie would pout until she got something better. One time, I bought a dress for a school dance with the money I earned babysitting. The next day, Julie accidentally spilled juice on it. She laughed and said, "Oops, guess you'll have to wear something else." My parents scolded me for yelling at her. That's how things always were. If Julie wanted something, she got it. If I needed something, I had to prove I deserved it, and even then, the answer was usually no. When Julie turned 18, my parents threw her a huge party. Balloons, music, catered food, the whole neighborhood was invited. When I turned 18 2 years later, my mom handed me a cupcake with one candle. No gifts, no celebration. Just a quick happy birthday before she went back to watching TV. I should have felt angry, maybe even jealous. But mostly, I just felt invisible. Still, I didn't give up. I got straight A's, I volunteered at the library, and even helped out at the local clinic during weekends. I thought, surely, they'd notice how serious I was. How much I cared. How hard I worked. One evening, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. They were discussing Julie's college. Mom said, "Of course we'll pay for her. She deserves the best." Dad agreed and added, "Stacy's smart. She'll figure it out on her own." That sentence stuck with me for weeks. She'll figure it out on her own. It wasn't just a lack of support, it was a decision. They weren't going to help me, not because they couldn't, but because they didn't want to. They believed Julie deserved their love and money. And me? I was just expected to survive. I cried that night. Not because I wanted money, but because I wanted to matter. I started saving whatever I could. Babysitting, working weekends at a small shop near our house, tutoring younger kids, anything that gave me a few dollars. My dream of becoming a doctor didn't disappear, but it started feeling heavier. Like something I had to carry alone. Julie never asked about my plans. She was busy posting selfies in her dorm room, shopping with her friends, and complaining about her hard life. My parents kept sending her money, praising her like she was a genius for just showing up to class. And me? I kept working. Quietly. Silently. Hoping that someday, somehow, things would change. I didn't know then how hard the road ahead would be. But deep down, a fire had already started inside me. I wasn't going to beg for their help anymore. I was going to become something, with or without them. After high school, things became even clearer. Julie had already started college. She got into a private university that charged more for one semester than most people earn in a year. But my parents didn't blink. They paid for her fees, books, rent, everything. She even got a new laptop and a car to help her focus on studies. I still remember the day they drove her to her new apartment. Mom cried, hugged her like she was sending her off to war. Dad carried her bags like she was a princess. They even gave her an envelope of cash, just in case. I stood by the doorway, watching them drive away. No one said goodbye to me. Back home, the house felt even more silent. No arguments, no laughter, just emptiness. I thought maybe, just maybe, now they'd notice me more. With Julie gone, I was the only one left. But nothing changed. Mom spent her days scrolling through Julie's photos and Instagram stories. Dad would proudly tell relatives, "Julie's doing great. We're so proud of her." No one ever asked how I was doing. Even when I passed my entrance exam for community college with top marks, all I got was a half-hearted "that's good" from my dad while he read the newspaper. I started college close to home, mostly because I couldn't afford to leave. My scholarship covered tuition, but not books, transport, or food. So I worked. Every day after classes, I went straight to my job at a grocery store. I cleaned shelves, bagged items, and worked the register while pretending everything was okay. I was always tired. I studied during lunch breaks, sometimes on the bus ride home. My hands hurt from lifting boxes. My feet ached every night. But I kept going. Sometimes, Julie would call during dinner. She'd talk for hours about her new apartment, the parties, the people she was dating. Mom and Dad would laugh and cheer her on. "You deserve the best, Julie," they'd say. And me? I'd be in the kitchen, doing the dishes, listening quietly. I tried talking to Mom once. I asked if they could help me pay for my books, just this semester. It wasn't much. Her reply cut deep, "Stacy, we've already spent so much on Julie. You're smart, you'll figure it out. Maybe try getting more hours at work." More hours? I was already working weekends, late evenings, and sometimes early mornings before class. But they didn't care. I stopped asking after that. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep. Not because of the money, but because I felt so forgotten. Like I didn't matter. I was doing everything right. I had straight A's, never got into trouble, worked hard. And still, I was invisible. One afternoon, something broke inside me. I came home exhausted after a 10-hour shift. I hadn't eaten all day. I walked into the living room and saw my parents sitting with shopping bags, new clothes for Julie. A few $100s at least. I stood there quietly, waiting. No one looked up. So I went to my room and closed the door. That night, I made a decision. If they wouldn't support me, I would stop trying to make them proud. I wouldn't ask for their approval anymore. I wouldn't wait for love that was never coming. I would focus on myself, and I would get out of that house, no matter how long it took. The next day, I picked up extra shifts at work. I started looking for cheap used books online, borrowing from seniors, and downloading free PDFs. I learned how to cook cheap meals that lasted for days. I gave up going out, new clothes, and even a phone upgrade. Everything I had went into my dream. I still wanted to become a doctor. That dream was the only thing keeping me going. I remember telling myself, they may have forgotten me, but I will never forget who I want to become. And so, while Julie lived her perfect life in the city, partying and failing half her classes without consequences, I kept working. Quietly. Steadily. Alone. Some nights were harder than others. There were moments when I wanted to scream, when I wanted to ask life why it was so unfair. But I didn't. I just kept going. Because I knew, one day, all of this pain would turn into something powerful. I wasn't just the forgotten daughter anymore. I was building something no one saw coming. And someday, they'd all realize what they lost when they chose to ignore me. Graduation was supposed to be a special day. For years, I had dreamed about walking across that stage in a cap and gown, smiling proudly as my name was called. I imagined my parents in the crowd, cheering, clapping, maybe even crying a little. I thought of the way my mom might hold flowers, or how my dad might take a blurry picture with his old phone. I imagined, for just one day, I would feel like I mattered. But life had a different plan. In the weeks leading up to graduation, things were tough. I was working nearly full-time hours at the store to pay for my remaining fees and living expenses. My classes were intense, and I barely had time to sleep. But I kept going. I didn't have the luxury of stopping. When I got the official email that I was graduating with honors, I cried. Right there, in the store break room, I sat on a plastic chair and cried into my apron. Not because I was sad, but because I had done it. Against all odds. Without their help. On my own. That night, I printed the graduation invitation at the library and carefully placed it in an envelope. I left it on the kitchen counter at home, right next to the coffee maker where Mom always lived in the morning. I wrote in neat handwriting, "Please come to my graduation." It would mean everything to me. I didn't say more. I didn't need to. For the next few days, I waited. Mom didn't say anything. Neither did Dad. They acted normal, as if I hadn't invited them to one of the biggest moments of my life. I began to wonder if they even read it. But I told myself to stay hopeful. Maybe they were planning a surprise. Maybe they didn't want to ruin it by saying anything early. I bought my graduation dress with my tip money, a simple, second-hand navy blue dress I found at a thrift store. My shoes had a small tear, but I stitched them up myself. I curled my hair the best I could and did my makeup using drugstore samples I had collected over the months. I stood in front of the mirror and smiled. I looked like someone who had fought hard, and won. The ceremony was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp. I arrived early, nervous and excited, and scanned the crowd for familiar faces. Families were holding signs, balloons, and flowers. Mothers in pretty dresses. Fathers in suits. Friends laughing and taking selfies. And me? I stood alone. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. My heart started sinking. I called my mom once, just to check. No answer. I called my dad. Voicemail. I told myself they were just running late. Traffic maybe? Parking problems? I stared at the entrance, hoping to see their faces. My name was coming up soon. The announcer was getting closer. And then, I heard it. Stacy Elaine Carter, graduating with honors. I took a breath, smiled, and walked onto the stage. The applause was loud, but none of it was for me. I didn't see them in the crowd. Not even one face looking back at me. I held the diploma in my hand, my heart pounding, my throat tight. My smile stayed frozen for the camera, but inside, I felt something break. After the ceremony, I stood near the courtyard where families were hugging their graduates. One girl sobbed in her mother's arms. Another laughed while her dad sprayed confetti. I stood with my phone in hand, pretending to text someone. Just to look busy. Just to not look so alone. Then I saw it. Julie's Instagram story. She had posted a picture with my parents. They were at a brunch, all three of them smiling, glasses raised in the air. The caption said, "Family time." Love weekends like this. I stared at the screen for a long time. No words. Just a sharp, deep silence in my chest. They hadn't just forgotten. They had chosen not to come. They had seen the invitation. They knew it was my big day. And they still picked Julie. Again. I wanted to scream, cry, throw my phone, but I didn't. I took a deep breath and swallowed every emotion like poison. I smiled at a passing classmate and said, "Thanks," when she complimented my dress. That night, I didn't go home. I went to my tiny apartment and sat on the floor with a slice of leftover pizza. I didn't even take off my makeup. I stared at my graduation cap, the gold tassel still dangling, and whispered, "You did it. Even if no one came, you did it." It was the loneliest victory of my life. But in that silence, something else was born. A new kind of strength. Not the kind that needed applause or hugs. Not the kind that needed validation. But the kind that says, "I'm still standing. I'm still going. And I don't need them anymore." I folded my gown, put away my cap, and promised myself, one day, they'll wish they had shown up. And when that day comes, I won't need them to clap. I'll be too far ahead to even hear it. After graduation, something inside me changed. The hurt was still there. Deep, heavy, and real. But alongside it, there was a fire. Quiet and steady. A voice in my head kept whispering, "You're on your own now. No one's coming. So rise." I didn't waste time feeling sorry for myself. I had already cried enough. I folded up my graduation gown, put it in a small box under my bed, and went back to work the very next day. I picked up extra shifts at the store. Morning, evening, weekend, whenever someone called out, I said yes. I didn't even check the schedule anymore. I just showed up. I needed every dollar. Rent, food, savings for med school applications, it all depended on me. There were days when I worked 12 hours straight, standing at the counter with a fake smile. My feet burned. My back ached. But I kept going. At night, when the store closed, I walked home. It wasn't a long walk, but it felt endless. The streets were quiet, the air heavy. I'd get home around 11, heat up instant noodles, and sit by the window with my books. That became my routine. Work. Study. Sleep. Repeat. My room was small, just a bed, a second-hand desk, and a single lamp. The paint was peeling on one wall, and the window didn't close properly in winter. But it was mine. A space I had earned. A space I could control. I started applying for affordable online pre-med courses. Some were free, others I paid for with money saved from tips. I bought used textbooks, borrowed notes from student forums, and watched endless YouTube lectures. If a video had poor audio, I turned on subtitles. If the screen was blurry, I paused every second to take notes. No one around me knew what I was doing. At the store, I was just the quiet girl who always said yes to shifts. At home, I was just the tenant who paid rent on time. But I was building something. Quietly. Brick by brick. Sometimes, I doubted myself. The dream of becoming a doctor felt so far away. Med school felt like a rich girl's game. Something for people with support, money, guidance, things I didn't have. But I reminded myself, I've already come this far. Alone. That meant something. One night, after a long shift, I fell asleep at my desk with a pen in my hand and a medical textbook open. When I woke up, the pages had tear marks. I didn't remember crying, but I had. Silently, in my sleep. I guess even strong girls break sometimes. But I didn't stop. Week by week, I passed course after course. I learned human anatomy, cell biology, pharmacology basics. I made flashcards, tested myself, watched surgeries online, all from that tiny room under a dim lamp with cheap coffee and hope. I met a few people online through student forums. One girl, Alina, became a virtual friend. She was from another state, also working while studying for med school. We messaged often, shared tips, and encouraged each other. Having even one person who believed in me made a big difference. At the store, I was promoted to shift supervisor. The pay increase wasn't much, but it helped. My manager, Mr. Carl, was a grumpy man in his 60s, but one day he said, "You've got something, kid. You don't complain. You just do it." That one sentence stayed with me for days. Meanwhile, Julie continued posting photos of her luxury life. New trips. New outfits. New boyfriends. Once, I saw a post where she thanked our parents for always believing in her dreams. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was sad. They had given her everything, and she still had no idea how lucky she was. I never called them. Never messaged. Not after graduation. If they wanted to know how I was doing, they could have asked. But they didn't. And I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of having parents who were proud of me. Who came to my events. Who hugged me after exams. But them, the real version? No. I had learned to live without them. Years passed like that. Quiet hustle. Lonely nights. One goal, get into med school. I started applying to real programs when I finally felt ready, maybe too early, maybe too late, but I did it. Each application felt like a piece of my soul. Every essay, every transcript, every dollar spent. I prayed that someone out there would see my worth. And then, one day, it happened. I got an email. The subject line read, "Congratulations. You've been accepted into our medical program." I dropped my phone. I stared at the screen, blinking. I read it again. And again. My hands were shaking. I ran to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and said it out loud for the first time, "I'm going to be a doctor." Not someday. Not maybe. It was happening. I sat on the floor and cried, not like before, from pain, but from relief. From pride. From years of quiet sacrifice finally turning into something real. That night, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't post online. I didn't even tell my manager. I just sat with myself. Because I had earned this. Alone. Without flowers, without applause, without anyone clapping in the crowd. Just me, and the fire inside me that never went out. Medical school wasn't like anything I had experienced before. It was intense, competitive, and exhausting, but for the first time, I felt like I truly belonged. Every lecture, every lab, every sleepless night spent memorizing the tiniest details of the human body felt like a step closer to the life I had always imagined. It was hard, unbelievably hard, but it wasn't the kind of hard that breaks you. It was the kind that sharpens you. I wasn't just studying to pass exams, I was studying to save lives. That thought kept me going. My first few months were the most difficult. I moved to a small shared apartment with 3 other med students, all of whom came from comfortable, supportive families. They talked about how their parents sent them care packages, how their moms made sure they ate well, and how their dads helped them plan their finances. I didn't join those conversations. I didn't have a care package. I had instant noodles, thrifted clothes, and a part-time job at a pharmacy near campus. While others slept after class, I worked evening shifts to pay rent and save for textbooks. I never told anyone. I didn't want pity. I just wanted to survive. There were days when I felt completely drained. After long lectures and endless note-taking, I would walk into the pharmacy with aching shoulders and a foggy brain. Customers complained. My boss barked orders. My shoes had holes in them. But I kept showing up, because I had no backup plan. There was no one to call for help, no one to wire me emergency money if I ran out. It was just me, and the dream I had carried in my heart since I was a teenager. Despite all the struggle, there were moments that made it all worth it. I remember the first time I held a human heart during anatomy lab. It was surreal, almost sacred. The weight of it in my hands reminded me of what I was working toward, something bigger than myself. Something that mattered. In that moment, all the pain and rejection I had faced felt far away. I was in the right place. I was doing the right thing. My grades stayed strong, even though I had to work twice as hard as everyone else. I couldn't afford private tutors or expensive prep books, so I relied on open-source material and study groups. Some of my classmates slowly began to respect me, not because I was the smartest, but because I was the most determined. I didn't miss deadlines. I didn't complain. I just kept going. Eventually, the administration noticed me. One of my professors, Dr. Lewis, called me to her office after an exam. I thought I had done something wrong. But instead, she looked at me and said, "You're one of the most focused students I've seen in years. I don't know your story, but I know you're going to be something someday." I thanked her and held back tears. That was the first time in my entire academic life that someone in authority had acknowledged my worth. By my 3rd year, I had been accepted into a residency program at a local hospital. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. I wore my white coat with pride, even though it was secondhand. The first time a patient called me doctor, my hands trembled. I wasn't technically a doctor yet, but the word hit me like thunder. All the nights I had cried, the days I went hungry, the birthdays I spent alone, it all came rushing back. That one word, spoken by a sick, elderly woman with a gentle voice, made it all worth it. I never forgot where I came from even as I moved forward. I saved money slowly, still lived with roommates, and still took night shifts at the pharmacy when needed. I couldn't afford to celebrate like the others. No fancy dinners, no graduation trip. But one day, I allowed myself a small reward. I walked into a store and bought a brand new white coat, tailored just for me. It was crisp, clean, and embroidered with my name, Dr. Stacy Carter. When I put it on, I didn't smile or cry, I simply stood still and let the weight of everything settle. I had earned every inch of that coat. No one could ever take it from me. Throughout residency, I saw the very pain I once lived through in the eyes of others: single mothers working night jobs, students trying to afford medication, people struggling with no support. I treated each of them with the kind of care I never received. I didn't just listen to their symptoms, I listened to their stories. I let them feel seen. Because I knew what it meant to feel invisible. One afternoon, as I left the hospital, I received a message from an old friend. It said, "Hey, saw your name on the clinic board. You're a doctor now? Wow. You really did it." I stared at the message for a long time before replying with just one word: yes. I didn't tell anyone from my past. Not Julie. Not my parents. They hadn't asked, and I didn't owe them updates. My life was no longer something I needed them to approve of. I had built it with my own hands, brick by brick, while they watched someone else. But deep inside, I knew the time would come when they'd find out. And when they did, it wouldn't be through a family phone call or a letter. It would be something they couldn't ignore. Something public. Something big. And I was ready for it. I had once been the forgotten daughter. The shadow in the corner. But now, I was Dr. Stacy Carter. And the world was finally about to see me.
Years had passed. By now, I was a practicing doctor in a respected hospital. My schedule was packed with back-to-back patients, and my name was listed on the hospital's website under Internal Medicine Team. I had my own white coat, my own office, and a life that I had built without shortcuts, without privilege. Without them, still, despite everything, there were moments when I would walk home after a long shift and wonder what they would say. If they saw me now, Julie, Mom, Dad, would they be proud? Would they say sorry? Would they even recognize the version of me that had grown from pain into strength? Then one day, something unexpected. The hospital's board selected me as the Young Professional of the Year. It was a formal ceremony with doctors from all over the state. They told me I'd be giving a short speech. Photos would be taken, videos would be shared online. It was going to be big. I sat in my office after the meeting, holding the invitation card they handed me. A part of me thought I should invite them, not because I wanted them there, but because they needed to see it. Not to punish them, but to show them what they had missed, what they had thrown away. So I wrote 3 cards, one for Mom, one for Dad, and one for Julie. You are invited to a ceremony honoring Dr. Stacy Carter. Friday, 7 p.m., City Grand Hall. Formal attire. Your presence is welcome, though not required. I didn't add any emotions. No, I miss you. No hope, you're proud. Just facts. Then I mailed them quietly and waited. The night of the event arrived. I wore a deep navy blue suit with my white coat neatly pressed. My name badge shone under the hall lights. The room was elegant, filled with long tables, candles, and soft music. There were flowers at every corner, screens displaying my photo along with others being honored. I smiled and shook hands as people congratulated me. Most didn't, and that was okay. I just needed them to be there. I kept glancing at the entrance, unsure if they would even show up. And then they walked in. Julie came first, wearing an expensive beige dress. She still looked like someone who believed the world owed her something. Behind her were my parents, both dressed like they were attending a wedding. My mother's eyes scanned the room, cautious but curious. My father looked stiff, unsure if he belonged there. They didn't approach me, not at first. They found a table near the back and sat down quietly. I could tell they felt out of place, surrounded by successful professionals and polished conversations. They didn't recognize this world because they had never expected me to be a part of it. When the announcer called my name, I walked to the stage with calm steps. The lights above me were warm, but I felt no heat. I took a breath, stood before the mic, and looked around the room. This award, I began, is not just about success. It's about the journey, and mine has been long, lonely, and built from the ground up. I wasn't the child anyone expected to become a doctor. I wasn't the one who got the praise or the support. I was the quiet one, the overlooked one, the girl who worked double shifts while studying biology under flickering light. I was invisible for a long time, but that invisibility became my strength. I paused, then continued. I remember graduating and walking across that stage with no one in the crowd cheering for me. I remember eating dinner alone that night, in the same dress I wore for the ceremony. I remember people choosing not to show up. And I remember deciding that day that I would never let that pain go to waste. The room was silent now. Even the waiters had stopped moving. My story isn't just mine. It belongs to every person who was told they weren't worth investing in. Every person who had to build themselves up from nothing. This moment is for us. I ended the speech with a soft smile and walked off the stage. The applause followed me, but my eyes didn't scan the crowd. After the event, as people gathered for photos and interviews, Julie opened her mouth as if to speak, but I didn't stop. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I had no anger, in my heart just clarity. They had made their choices years ago. They had left me standing alone on a day that meant everything to me, and now they were standing in a crowd where I was the center of attention, and they didn't belong. Later that evening, I received a text from Julie. I'm proud of you. Wish I had known how much this meant to you back then. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. My success was never about making them regret their actions. I only needed belief in myself. And now I had everything I had once dreamed of, not because of them. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was Dr. Stacy Carter, and I had finally come home to myself